Yeah. Unplugged. We in the tent now. Yeah. Pulled up to the woods, real talk, no filter. Life hit different when you sit with a healer. Campfire glow, yeah, the truth get loud. No stage, no mask, just a man in this crowd. We talk pain, we talk growth, we talk purpose. Every scar got a story underneath the surface. From the struggle to the strength, yeah, we laying it out. If you listening close, you gon' figure it out. This ain't just a pod, it's a place to be real, where the silence get loud and the broken can't heal. So step in the tent, leave the world outside. Unplug conversations, let your truth ride. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I was trying to avoid the pain. I saw my father in terrible pain, and nothing they could give him, heroin or whatever, would stop the pain when he was in his last few weeks of life. He couldn't even hold food down except by some artificial means. In other words, he smoked a little marijuana, and that would let him hold his food down. But I didn't want to go through that, so I was trying to avoid that. I wasn't worried about so much about dying, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. When I was diagnosed at 18, and then it jumped up in 6 weeks to 24, and another 6 weeks it came back down to 2021. So my doctor said, we're just going to call it 20 for the books, and say you've got a PSA of 20 and you've got a problem. And I said, well, doc, can we do some of these non-invasive testings, like MRIs and things like that? He says, well, we don't usually give those right away. We usually do the biopsy right away. I said, well, I'm not into invasive testing, because once you start poking holes in it and putting air up there, things can take a different turn. This thing is alive, and it has everybody I talk to about that seem to have a worse time. If you don't get right on it, if they do a biopsy, you're really pushing the clock, and you've got to move faster. So, he said, yeah, but you got to move fast anyway, because, the numbers are so high. If it gets outside the prostate, we're going to really have a problem. Mm-hmm. I convinced them that I needed the non-invasive testing, because I'm a veteran and I didn't have any other insurance company they needed to talk to. And they did the first test. After they did the first MRI, they came back and said, wow, we don't usually recommend surgery for a guy your age. I was 68 at the time. They said, but we've done 4 labs on you, and your labs, my doctor said, I'm 47, your labs are better than mine, so I recommend, if you were my dad, I'd tell you to do the prostatectomy and get the thing removed and get rid of it. I talked to him about the radiation treatments, thermal beam radiation and brachytherapy, like Ron talked about. He said, well, we can do those things, but if we do any kind of radiation to your prostate before you do the surgery, it becomes so tender, you're not going to find a surgeon who's going to want to touch it, because if you touch it in the slightest way, you can rupture the thing, because the radiation makes it so susceptible to not being able to do that kind of surgery. So I chose the surgery first, because he put me on once we found out that exactly what I had to work with. And as Ron said, he didn't give me, he gave me advice, but not really advice, just told me the facts. And the facts were, and I did my research. I went on the internet and pulled up about an inch and a half of paper, printed it out, and read everything I could about it. And the bottom line is, bumps were very close to the surface next to the bladder. And the idea was the race was to get them out of there before they popped, because there is a time there's a time consideration you're working with as they start to grow fast and they get near the outside of the prostate itself, right in the thin skin. You've got a real problem there. So we rushed right into within a month into the surgery to remove my entire prostate. Now, to give you some idea how complicated that can be, I said, well, doc, how long does surgery take? He says, well, it's going to take about 2.5 hours. I said, okay, I can bear that. When I woke up, there was a male nurse standing over me looking down at me, and he said, Mr. Joe, you've been under the knife for 10.5 hours.
Wow.
I said, I need to talk to the doctor about that. So when I did get to talk to the doctor, it was robotic surgery, and he's one of the best robotic surgeons in the country. He said what they got to the actual cancer zone right next to the bladder, it was so hard, it was like concrete, like chalk, and they had to slow down and nip very, very slowly, for one, to avoid nicking the bladder, and two, to preserve any nerves, to try not to disturb any nerves that didn't need to be disturbed. So that's what took so long in my case. So you can see, if you get started early, you have several options, and you can kind of switch them around a little bit. But if you let it go long, it starts to push you, and you don't have, you make the choices. But your choice is going to need to be consistent with your situation, and the process is going on. Now, when they took my prostate out, they also removed lymph glands to the right and left, because they wanted to know that it hadn't gotten into the lymph system, because this thing travels around at microscopic levels you can't see. And so they tested my lymph glands to make sure it hadn't spread to my lymph system. Now, great. Out of the hospital, 2.5 years, almost 3, my PSA starts to creep up again. It was non-detectable, less than 0.05%, which they say that's about the limit of the test. Okay, so it's non-detectable, it's gone. 3.5 years later, my PSA starts to creep back up. It goes from nothing to 0.03, and then 3 months later, it's at 0.06, we'll just say. 3 months later, it's at 0.09, and 3 months later, it's at 0.12. The doctor said, I think we have a trend. It's moving up 0.03 increments every quarter, so we need to do something about that. And they brought me back in to do the whole bank of tests again. Now, they had done all these tests before, the MRI, the PET scan, the PET scan with gamma treatment, the one that Ryan was talking about, so expensive. They're all expensive. The MRI is about $5,000. They're all over $5,000 a test, which is why they try not to give them to you. But they did it before my surgery, and then after 3 years, they took me back in and did a whole new run of those tests. Now, your tax dollars at work, but now, here's the thing. They didn't find anything in all the tests except for the PSA. He said, well, what we know now is because it was so close to the bladder and it was so hard to cut out, we might have left a cell or two in the bed of the prostate, because we try not to cut through the bed of the prostate right next to the bladder. And what you've got is a case of something that's microscopic. It's there. It's making itself known in the PSA. That's why I recommend the PSA, by the way. It's much more sensitive than the digital scan, than the finger thing. And he said, we can start you on another treatment regimen to make sure we can get ahead of that. Well, what do you recommend? They said, well, we recommend hormone therapy. Now, you have to understand there's hormone therapy, there's radiation therapy of a couple of types, and then there's chemotherapy. Chemotherapy, if you read up on it, I don't care what kind of cancer you got, you get chemotherapy, you might as well, your lifestyle has changed. You're going to be sick just from the chemo. You're going to be so weak and tired just from the chemo. And I knew that, so I said, well, let's do the hormone therapy. Now, they said, well, because we took your cancer out in the first place, we know that your cancer lives on testosterone. What we want to do is stop your testosterone, cut it off completely. He said, now there's a problem with that, and the problem simply is we're not going to cut off your female hormones. Males have female hormones too. There's always a balance of estrogen and testosterone in the male body. But when we cut off the male testosterone, your female estrogen is going to take over, and you're going to have some symptoms like you can relate to females with. Well, we did that, and the symptoms he was talking about were hot flashes. Ron and I talked about hot flashes.
Oh yeah.
But I can tell you this: I had 2 an hour for a while there, which is, I mean, it was burning up, man. It was like, put the covers on. Oh no, 15 minutes later, take the covers off. Now I'm soaking wet with sweat. Change my t-shirt, my shirt, my shorts, my underwear, whatever I'm sleeping in. Okay, and then I go back down and I'm back up, and I'm back down and I'm back up. This twice an hour.
Let me see. let me stop you for a second, Larry. I told Larry, so I had hormone therapy as well. I was telling Larry, I'm having these hot flashes. Hot flashes. I used to graph my hot flashes on a spreadsheet. So I took it into my doctor on one of the exams. I said, "Look, I have 41 hot flashes in a 24-hour day." I said, "41," and he just laughed. He just laughed and said, "Well, now you know how women feel."
And the funny thing is, they say you're really not hot. It's your body thermostat that's messed up. So you're
Mhm.
really not. Your body, you can take your temperature. You're not hot, but you can't tell your body that you feel hot and you're sweating and everything,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
But I tell you that because there's some expectations that it's not
right,
all fun and games, but and they can give you something to control the hot flashes. But I told the doctor, I don't want any more drugs than you have to give me. I'll put up with these hot flashes. They only last
right.
for a while. They don't last
Yeah,
Yeah.
that long. A few weeks into the hormone therapy, and they kind of start out slow and then peak and then go back down as you continue the hormone therapy.
Okay.
But after I finished my hormone therapy, they said, well, now your PSA is back down to non-detectable. But we're not sure we got it. We want to irradiate you with thermal beam radiation, and we want to do 7 weeks of therapy. That's a radiation every day, 5 days a week until you get 7 weeks of it. So that for me that meant 39. 19 of the radiation went directly to my prostate bed, which is where the problem started. And then 20 more, 10 each side of my pelvis. They irradiated my entire pelvis. Uh, so that's kind of how that process started and stopped. And that was last March that I finished that regimen. And today I'm still non-detectable. They're hoping they got it all, but we're still testing and we're still going every 6 months, like Ron said. Once you get started, it's a constant battle. You don't know if you just got to keep testing it for it. If they get it early enough in young people, I have a friend who, just to give you some idea how varied this can be. My friend's 51 years old, and they removed his entire prostate. Also, he lives out in Denver. Now he's not black, but he had the problem earlier in life, probably like my father, and they removed his prostate completely. Now, that's usually when they do a full removal. Once you get to be 60 or 70, they don't really like to give you that because general anesthetic can be rough on your body. Coming back, I mean, that's the closest you're going to get to death is ever going to happen to you is when they generally anesthetize you because you're going down to, you don't know. But the point is, they don't like the risk of doing it for people at elevated ages. So that's what we're trying to tell you guys. You need to get on this thing, and you need to do your homework and do your research and get your doctor engaged so you can be aware of where you stand in the spectrum at all times because you have a lot of control over this, and the doctors are going to give you full control over it once they find out what you have. It's the prognosis now.
Yeah.
In other words, this is where you are and this is where you're going. And what do you want to do about it? Your choice. Here are your options. Here are your options.
Well, like I said, I'm gonna I'm going to document, the whole process, and I hope that it would inspire some. I don't care if you're black, white, Hispanic, Chinese, men. Just get yourself checked. I appreciate you guys for being, transparent and coming on here for this first series.
Anthony, before you, yeah, I know you're wrapping up, but let me just give one other example. Someone who I'm very close with, who I didn't invite to come on this panel. Okay, so you have my situation where I basically had my prostate, irradiated. Larry had his removed. My cancer has not come back so far, knock on wood. Basically diagnosed as being cancer free. Larry had some signs and he was able to do the follow up treatments once he had his prostate removed. Now I know someone else who did a procedure similar to mine. There's another procedure, can't remember what it's called exactly. Larry, you may know the name of this. They take what looks like little rice granules, and they stick them inside prostate. What's that procedure called? Do you know, Larry?
I'm not sure the name of it, but those are radiation. They call them radiation pills.
Pill,
They're
right, right.
actually sources of radiation, and they put them right next to the cancer because the and it's a low level source, so it doesn't affect the whole body, but it does affect the cancer that's right next to it. Because radiation
Right.
it varies with the inverse square of the distance. So if you get something
Yeah.
really close, you don't need a
Close.
strong source to
Right.
make a big difference.
So
And they
that's
do
what that
that.
right. So that's what he had, right? He had that procedure, right? Another form of radiation. Now, unfortunately, his radiation came back. Okay. Now he can't have his prostate removed, and the cancer has migrated outside of the prostate cell. And this is the thing. Doesn't matter how slow that cancer grows. If you've got cancer in your prostate and it's near the cell wall, and I'm calling the prostate the cell, if it's near that cell wall, if that cancer gets outside of that cell wall and then to your lymph node system, young men, that is a death sentence. There's nothing that he can do now other than hormone therapy. And all hormone therapy does is slow the growth of the cancer. That's it. You never want to get to where he is. But here's three different examples of what can happen, what could happen, and what might happen. And Anthony, we're praying for you, brother. You know that you're getting there in time. That the treatment that you choose is what's going to work for you. And you have all my prayers as you go through this process.
Appreciate it.
I will tell you this. My father, once it got outside the prostate, he had tumors on his forehead, tumors under his arms, because wherever the lymph system goes, it's a circulatory system, just like the blood vessel system, goes all over the body, and cancers will pop up anywhere in your body. And he was on chemotherapy. That was the last thing you can go through when he passed away, and all of that. Of course, he ended up bedridden and in pain and couldn't eat and all of those sort of things. So, I actually told the doctor when they wanted to do invasive testing that I said, Doc, how long do I have? This is when we knew that I had the cancer. He said, and we hadn't decided what to do next. He said, well, you got about 6 years or so, we think. I said, well, if you're not going to do non-invasive testing, I'll take my 6 years and go home and let that be that, because I don't want to aggravate this thing, because it's a living organism. Mm-hmm. And they took my advice on that, which I'm glad they did, and took me the route I did. Now, there are residuals when they take your prostate out, because your prostate acts like a gate valve on your urethra. Mm-hmm. Which means that as long as you have your prostate, you have pretty good control over your urine. When they remove the prostate, you may get a 1 or 2 minute warning, but you got to go when you got to go. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they don't tell you that part, so I'm telling you that part. So the options are you can live with that, or you can take the other approaches, but they all have their success rates. And your doctor will probably characterize your success rate for you, so to help you make a proper decision, because it's the success rate that you're working with. How likely are they to be able to cure or handle or make your situation go into remission? And the best thing they could give me as an offer was let's take it out of there and get rid of it, because get the whole prostate out, because your prostate is so far gone, it's not going to be of any other use to you anyway.
Yeah.
So, and just so you know, fellas, if you study about this, testosterone's made in the gonads, so you don't lose your testosterone. Semen is made, and sperm is made in the gonads. Semen is made in the prostate. That's the white liquid. Okay, that's all. That's what you're losing. You're losing the white liquid, and you're basically getting an automatic vasectomy too, because they're going to cut out all those tubes. So, and that's basically what you lose. They say you can still get an erection, you can still tenuous, but if you do have an ejaculation, you can feel it. You still feel it, the sensation. Just they call it a dry ejaculation, but really it's not really, because your Kegels squeeze your bladder, and if there's anything in your bladder, it's coming out right then. So anyway, just so you know, I'm trying to, it's not a scare tactic,
Yeah.
but it's a realization of what you're choosing when you're choosing a method of how you want the rest of your life to go. And quality of life, I can do everything physically now. I mean, I got a little bit anemic after they irradiated my my bones, where my red blood cells are made. Most of your red blood cells are made in the largest bones. Your hip bone's your largest bone. So I got somewhat anemic last year, and had to take some transfusions and things for that. Not blood transfusions, but iron transfusions and iron pills to get back up. And I'm doing all my exercises, and I'm going to play golf next month. That's how good I'm doing. I'm going to play 4 rounds of golf in 4 days in Orlando. So I'm feeling pretty good now. I'm not running yet, but my muscles are acting right. And so I'm doing all right.
Again, let me just back up just a little bit about the treatment that, you know, it's scary to think about getting cancer treatments, but I remember when I was going through my thermal radiation, there's a little story for you guys, something to think about also. Uh, so the first week, like Larry said, it's, 5 days a week, for 6 or 7 weeks, you get Saturday and Sunday off. So my first week, and just the fact you're getting these radiation treatments and you have cancer, you're dealing with that mentally and psychologically. Oh man, I got cancer. Oh, I'm getting, and your mind is kind of running through all this, because what you're not getting, or what I didn't get, and I wish there was this available, was a forum that I could talk to other guys who are in all stages of treatment. Just getting started, 5 weeks in, 3 weeks in, have finished it. It would have been great if I had someone that I could talk to about this, but I didn't. And when I went to do my cancer treatments, the oncologist's office where it's done, they have you set up in 15-minute intervals, so that when you walk into the office, the guy who's there before you just walked in, and the next guy doesn't come in until you're getting ready to come out. So you can even talk to those people about, hey, where are you with this process and what's going on with you? And so it keeps it very personal, which was fine. But I kept wanting someone to talk to, and this is the reason why. Okay, I go through the first week, right? Go in 15 minutes and go, oh, that wasn't bad. What's the time on cancer treatment? This cancer stuff is a breeze, right? Second week, I start going, I'm kind of feeling kind of funny, and I'm having trouble holding my bladder. What's happening here, right? So then I go, and the thing is, when you get your radiation treatments, they want you to have a full bladder, right? So you go into the room, they sit you down on the table and they x-ray you. If your bladder isn't full, they ain't gonna make you drink water until you get a full bladder, and then you come back in. But now that you have a full bladder, guess what? You've got to use the bathroom, but you can't use the bathroom because you got to get the scan. So you try to time it, right? So you get to learn to time it. Well, I'm gonna drink water 40 minutes before. By the time I get my scan, I have a full bladder. They get done, and I go use the bathroom. Okay, so now I'm like 3 weeks in, and now I'm wearing Depends, right? 'Cause I've learned my lesson, right? Hey, let me get my Depends on, let me get ready, let me do my thing, and so I got everything timed really well. Well, now I'm 6 weeks in, right? I have this full bladder, and so when you pull your stuff down, because you got to pull your stuff down, you pull it down just above the pelvic bone area, right? So you expose yourself that much. They put these little radiation markers on you because they've already identified where the cancer is, so the machine knows where to aim the beams. So I put my stuff down just above my pelvic line, right? Got my Depends on. I'm laying there and I'm thinking, oh man, I got to go to the bathroom really, really, really bad. But I have to hold it, because if you end up going to the bathroom, then you got to wait another hour or so before you just do this all over again. And I'm saying, I'm trying to wait. So I'm looking at this machine. By the way, you're laying in this table, and this machine is going around your entire body. Right, so it's making a full 360-degree turn. So I'm laying there, thinking, oh, I gotta go. And so I'm watching the machine. It comes up, really, really slow, coming up, and it comes up. And it's about halfway there. Oh man, I got to go. I don't know if I can hold this, and I got to go. It's coming around, gets on this side of me, and it gets under me. So I know all I have to do is come back up. And I'm laying there. And I can't hold it, and I'm too embarrassed to tell the doctor I got to go to the bathroom. I'm saying, oh. And by the time I decide what I'm going to do, man, man, urine went where I thought was everywhere. Okay. So now I have emptied my bladder, right? And I'm thinking, oh, this is so embarrassing. I'm gonna get off at this table. Man, urine's gonna be all over the table. And I get up and it is completely dry. And all of that urine went into that Depends. Those things really, really, really hold a lot of liquid because everything, everything went into the Depends, and I didn't get embarrassed, and they did their job, and I came on out and went to the bathroom, and put another pair, and I was out of there. But just sharing one of my experiences with this treatment. And there are things that you can laugh about, but in the end, it's a serious thing, and we want to emphasize the seriousness of this. And hopefully, Anthony, there'll be follow-ups. I think if you want Larry and I back, we're more than happy to discuss, this even further. And this makes me think, Anthony, that we're talking about this. We also need to talk about getting colon inspections, right? And colonoscopies, and making sure that our checking our blood pressure, which is a simple thing to do, and make sure you're getting routine blood pressure checks. And if you need to get a cardiologist, that as well, right? I can't tell you all the other doctors that I go to see, but yet I'm still pretty healthy. Like Anthony said, he saw me doing a 5K where I was documenting the 5K, which meant that sometimes in the back of this group, then I rush to the front of the group, and then I go to the side of the group, then I go back to the back of the group. So I'm running back and forth through the group, and I didn't know Anthony, right? We were just meeting in this group of almost 200 Disney people, right, on this cruise ship. So we didn't know each other. We met at the embarkation party that they had, but that was it. So I'm going back and forth in this group, and someone had said something about what kind of shape I was in. So as I'm passing everybody, I said, "Yeah, not bad for an old guy who has quadruple bypass, prostate cancer, and abdominal surgery." And that was the extent of that conversation. Quadruple bypass, prostate cancer, abdominal surgery, and I was out of there. But somehow that resonated with Anthony when he got his diagnosis, and he gave me a call. So I thank you for that, Anthony. I do. I do.
And listen, and I thank you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up, and
Yeah.
thank you all for everybody that's watching. This is the very first episode, and next episode, I have another cancer survivor, and this guy, he's in his 40s, and he is a two-time prostate cancer survivor. So make sure you tune in next week. Thank you guys. I appreciate you.